Shivashati madam.
Yes, ma'am. For 2 minutes. 2 minutes, ma'am. Bindu ma'am around 2 minutes.
Viola madam, good afternoon.
Viola ma'am வந்துட்டாங்க ஆனா பிந்து மேம் வரல இன்னும். Viola ma'am unmute பண்ணுங்க ma'am. Dr. Viola
good afternoon ma'am.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon ma'am. Dr. Bindu ma'am என்னாச்சு ma'am? நம்ம ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாமா பியூலா மேம்? அவங்க வந்த உடனே ஆட் பண்ணிக்கலாங்க மேம். ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாமா? பண்ணிடலாம். ஓகே பண்ணிடலாமா? ஓகே மேம். பிரேமா மேம் நம்ம பண்ணிடுவோம். 3 o'clock ஆயிடுச்சுல மேம் பண்ணிடுவோம். அவங்க வந்த உடனே ஆட் பண்ணிக்கலாம். சரி.
சார் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாமா சார்? ஜான் சார்.
John sir. Dr. John sir.
Yes.
We shall start.
Yes.
Shall we start, sir?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Good afternoon to one and all gathered here. I wholeheartedly welcome you all to the 1-week international level online seminar on contextual based adaptive pedagogy organized by Center for Capacity Building Program for School Teachers, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, in collaboration with the Department of Education, School of Distance Education, Bharatiyar University, and Department of Education, Mother Teresa Women's University, Kodaikanal. Teacher is a person who always helps everybody to get the knowledge and always stands beside the students. Today, we have such a resourceful person, Dr. Rajesh John, with us. For formal introduction of the resource person, I welcome Dr. A. Renuka Devi, Head in Charge, Department of Education, to welcome the resource person.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Madam, good afternoon.
I feel happy.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Parajamal.
Good afternoon.
I feel happy to introduce Dr. Rajesh John, Assistant Professor in Educational Psychology, Education, Directorate of Collegiate Education, Government of Kerala. Currently, he is serving as Assistant Professor in Government of Education, Kozhikode. He has 9 years of teaching experience. He is the trainer of trainers in psychological counseling, NAC and KAS-ACS. He is a supervisor of counselors, JAXAM project, Tata Institute of Social Science. 3 students are awarded research degrees under his guidance. He has published 12 papers in international and 10 papers in national journals, 5 articles in edited books. He authored 6 books: Molding Minds in Classroom, Health Education, The Teacher, Journey Across Childhood, Differential Psychology, Optimal Learning. He presented 38 papers in national and international conferences and an invited guest for sharing and keynote address in 9 national seminars, invited resource person for 28 national and state level workshops and trainings. I welcome him to act as a resource person for the second day of our webinar on contextual based adaptive pedagogy. Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. Okay. Shall I start?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Premlada madam, for your kind words.
Thank you, sir.
I am extremely happy to collaborate with you on this webinar, jointly organized by the three eminent universities, whom I call the triplets of education in Tamil Nadu. I appreciate the efforts taken by the organizers, the vice chancellors, department heads, and the coordinators and conveners of this program. It shows that our passion, knowledge, and academic progress have surpassed the hurdles placed by COVID pandemic. The topic of this seminar, I hope, has been sufficiently introduced yesterday during the inaugural session, and also by Dr. Ahmad Elias Unni Mustafa in his pioneering lecture. And my mission here is just to join the stream that has already started to flow since yesterday. A friend of mine who is the CEO of a company asked me to suggest a few staffs to recruit to his firm. He was in need of some staff for his company. He had already made some interview, but he could not select the proper candidates. So he asked me to select some candidates for him. I asked him about what is the qualification for the candidates. He said, any graduate, but should suggest from my confidence. Then I raised my concern. Any graduation alone enough. What about language proficiency? What about computer skills and other communication skills, interpersonal skills? Are they not necessary? He said, of course, they need computer skills. They need language skills and interpersonal skills. But you should suggest candidates from who are reliable, whom we can trust, whom we can entrust some responsibilities, and who will undertake the duties and commitments with sincerity. Regarding these are concerned, I can train them. I can train them in communication. I can develop their skills in computer. It requires hardly 1 or 2 months. After the index of the candidates, I can put them for training. So that is not an issue here. And my friend added that it is easy to teach skills. It is easy to improve ability and strength, but it is not easy to develop a character. The aim of education from the olden days were purely for character formation. They knew that if character is good, everything is good. It is the same principle that guided my friends for staff recruitment here. And this is the same principle which I emphasize for the pedagogical practices. In this modern age of professional education, which focus on skills and competencies, the traditional aim of education for character formation is still relevant. In education, we have so much of developments. Techniques we develop every year. We develop new methods. We develop new strategies and new applications for imparting knowledge. It is easy to formulate a new pedagogical methods, new strategies, and new techniques and approaches, but with so much ease, we cannot develop a committed teacher. Now, when we discuss the adaptive pedagogical strategies, when I think of the approach of context-based education, at the onset, what I have to share with you is that no method is effective beyond the quality of the teachers. The context-based method is not an exception to that. Looking to the amount of energy and resources we spend for skill development, the facilities we provide, the situations we create, much of them has been wasted solely because we could not ensure the personal qualities of the candidates who are qualified and skilled. That is why the CEO of the company asked me to suggest any candidate with the personal qualities, and the qualifications can be added later. Therefore, the context-based approach we discussed today is not a magical method in itself, but it has a magical effect in the hands of a professionally committed stalwarts of education. The second thing I want to bring to your notice is that no teaching strategy is equally applicable for all the students in the class. Every class is normally distributed with average students falling into the majority, with those gifted on one extreme and those below average on the other extreme. Gifted students do not require any important strategies to pursue learning. Resilient as they are and intrinsically motivated, they learn. If we insist on them to stick on to the strategy we implement, that only damage their creativity, because they have an edge over what our technique entails. On the other side, that below average students, the imported strategy is not enough for them. But they require something more. For them, we need to go beyond the method with additional support. The context-based pedagogy is therefore applicable to the average majority, the educable majority. So what about the other two groups? This method can be adapted catering to the need of the gifted and also of the backward. And that is a skill of the teacher, the skill to adapt the pedagogy to meet the needs of all the students. The idea driven home is that success of any method rests on the discretion and discernment of the teacher who implements it. Success of any method depends on the discretion and discernment of the teacher who implements it. Hence, the context-based method we discussed today very much depends on the quality of the teacher who implements it. The third point I want to make before I proceed is that any strategy or method we implement works effectively only based on certain principles. No learning outside these principles. Principles of learning tell how a learning can take place, and they guide the ways in which people learn most effectively. The principles are also referred to as laws of learning, which binds all strategies and methods. In 1850s, in 1850s means almost 170 years back, there lived a social reformer named Kuriakose Elias in a place called Chavara in Kerala. He opened up new schools for the low caste and low class people. A major problem he noticed among those poor students to attend school was their poverty, as most of them had nothing to eat on days. Therefore, he formulated a strategy to give students food from the school. That was the beginning of the midday meal program in India. For Kuriakose Elias realized hungry students are not ready for learning. Hunger being a primary need should be addressed first. Unless the student is not physically and psychologically ready for learning, learning cannot take place. This is the principle of learning. However sophisticated our technique is, it will be useless with the students who are not physically or psychologically ready. Kuriakose Elias also realized that students do not want to come to school, but they want to go with their parents who go for work, daily work. But those students, because they do not know the value and the need of education, but still those students came for the lunch provided from the school and only for the single meal given at noon. Slowly, Kuriakose Elias could make them realize the need for education. He convinced them that there are higher goals than midday meal for coming to school. Here the principle is that without motivation, there is no learning. With food alone, we cannot teach students. If the students are not motivated, whatever be the strategies, methods, and the facilities, they are of no use. So this is if lack of motivation is a major problem with the present students, it is more among those high socio-economic families. It is very well evident when the examination is at hand, either father or mother or both of them take leave from their office and watch over their child learning. And the child study and prepare for the exam only for his parents. In some families, even the undergraduate students require their parents to sit with them to engage them in study. Motivation is the second principle of learning. You might wonder why I am referring to something which everybody knows. Of course, everybody knows that motivation is necessary, but few knows that it is a serious pressing problem in most educated and well-to-do families. And most students study not by intrinsic motivation, but by the external pressure from the parents. And students with such a level of motivation, I wonder what contribute once they come to the position. When Kyriakos Elias started school, lack of motivation was a problem of low-class students. But now it is with the middle class and upper class students. The major reason is that they find learning has no relevance in their life, partly because the course they chosen may not be of students' interest and aptitude. So they feel study has no meaning in their life. You know, students are compelled to choose course and subjects for the social status. So here the third principle is the principle of relevance. Relevance. Unless the students feel that study has any relevance in their life, the learning strategies we adopt will be ineffective. Have you heard of a teacher named Peter Tabichi? Peter Tabichi is an African teacher from Kenya. He was awarded Global Teacher Prize for the year 2019. What he did for getting the Global Prize? By hard work, he could make his school, village school, one of the best in the country. His students, mostly from the families of criminal background, had no taste of positive experience. No one had ever spoken a good appreciative remark to these children. Peter Tabichi struggled hard to inculcate in the student a feeling that they were good and they could succeed. The technique was simple. He made an appreciative inquiry into their life and provided consistent feedback to the student for whatever the effort they put up. Feedback can work wonders. And it is a fourth principle of learning. Consistent supportive feedback helps make learning and learning method more effective. Peter Tabichi had helped and encouraged the students to formulate projects for social development. Nearly 65% of the projects were accepted for national exhibition, and most of them got recognized for implementation. This was a great reinforcement for the students to continue being productive and creative scientifically. So even after leaving the school, they kept their scientific temper and the temper for learning. Reinforcement can sustain the efforts of the students, and this is a fifth principle of learning. The progress made by the student have to be reinforced for making it stronger. It is this consistent reinforcement that made Peter Tabichi School the #1 in the country. I have a friend in the neighborhood who had graduated in electronics. One day I approached him with my electronic gadgets for repair, but he refused to do it on the ground that he doesn't remember and he doesn't know, he said. His problem was disuse. If we don't use or practice what we have acquired, we gradually forget it. Information processing theory of learning emphasizes especially on the repetition and rehearsal of the learned. Therefore, practice of learning is the sixth principle of learning. And the last principle is transfer. If you don't apply the skills and knowledge in different situations, learning is impotent. Any adaptive pedagogy we try to follow is not an exception to these 7 principles I stated here. The context-based method also works well with this principle only. Now, all these might give you the impression that learning is a big deal to deal with. It requires a lot of struggle. But the truth is that learning is so natural for us. It is as natural as breathing and as natural as sleeping. Learning, in general sense, is an ability possessed by all people. All living creatures learn. Everybody has the capacity to learn. If they do not learn, they are dead. Learning helps them acquire vital skills and adapt to changing situations in life. How do we live in the season of COVID? How do we live through the flood and droughts, landslides and earthquakes, economic depression and communal riots? It's because we could learn the survival skills. Therefore, in general sense, learning means life. Then why do we need training and specialist method for teaching and learning? If learning is an inherent quality and skill, if it is so natural like breathing and sleeping, why should training? The point is, everybody can breathe naturally. But to breathe in a special way for a special purpose, we need a training. Similarly, everybody can sleep naturally. But to sleep in a special way with a special purpose, we need a training. So we had a training. But what happened is that when the technique of sleeping and breathing became so methodological that people started to lose the quality of natural experience of sleeping and breathing. Sleeping and breathing became an arduous work. We now need to learn how to breathe and how to sleep naturally with ease. This is what happened in education now. We need to learn how to learn as naturally as we progress in life. The adaptive pedagogy aims to make learning as natural as possible. The aim of context-based learning is to make learning a part of normal life. Learning theories depicted by Pavlov, Skinner, Thorndike, Kohler, and Tolman are all natural learning. In traditional classroom, a teacher comes to the class. I am going to give you an example. I want you to take a good note of this example because this example will be referring continuously throughout my lecture. So listen carefully to this example. In a traditional classroom, a teacher comes to the class every day and teaches the students. The teacher insists that students study their daily lessons and be ready to face examination on any day. On any day, unexpectedly, without prior announcement, the teacher would conduct a class test from the topic under discussion. Students have no idea on which day they have examination. After coming to the class, after the prayer, after the formal checking of the attendance, the teacher would declare, today we have a test on the subject. So this is a style of the teacher. So the students were under pressure to remain up to date every day because every day they are expecting a class test. In no way students could identify what they were going to have during the period that day until the teacher announces whether it is test or whether it is a class. And this went on for a while. Gradually, students started to notice that if the teacher comes to the class with the teaching materials like chalk, book, charts, or other learning aids, then they are have class. And if the teacher's hands are empty, then they are going to have exam. Then onwards, students eagerly look if the teacher is carrying any teaching material in his hand or not. If there is, they are relieved. If not, their stress continues. That is, if there is teaching material, for example, a textbook, students respond in relief. Now, students have learned that teaching material means teaching and no teaching material means examination. Now, you must have identified what type of learning it is and which theory explains this. I use a technical term for the teaching material. The teaching material is a stimulus, and students' expression of relief is the response. This is a learning based on stimulus response theory. In the presence of the stimulus, a specific response is elicited. And there are two stimuli here. One is the presence of a learning material, which elicited relief from the students. And the other is the absence of the learning material or the empty hands of the teacher, which reinforced the stress they already had. Now, I want you to focus on the fact that this learning took place in a real life situation, not in a laboratory, nor in the classroom formal teaching. This learning is a life experience of the students. Same kind of learning had taken place in the laboratory in Pavlov's experiment. Saliva was elicited from the dog by the sound of the bell. And the sound of the bell means food to the dog. So the hands means examination to the students. We also call it a substitution learning. As the bell substitute for food, here the empty hand substitute for examination and evoking a conditioned response. I give another example. In another example, a child who sees a candle burning gets attracted to it, reaches to it, and touches the flame, and hands get burned. Next time, seeing the candle, the child shudders away out of fear. The child learned that a candle flame is not as pleasant as it appears to be. This is learning by consequence, a response stimulus learning. This learning is also not a classroom situation learning, but a real life learning. And this is the point I am driving to. Now there's a third example. We have an arch dam in Kerala. An arch dam constructed across Periyar River in Idukki. The idea of this dam was evolved when an engineer named Joseph John looked at the whole landscape, which consisted of a river flowing and some hills scattered around the river and a few miles away, and there is a deep valley on one side. His insightful look led to the development of a pattern or a gestalt connecting those hills, river, and the valley. When he looked at this landscape, he visualized a dam complex, 3 dams connecting different hills, and a penstock pipe taking water to the generator station in the valley. And now what he saw was not mere hills, river, and valley, but a dam site. The whole is more than sum of its parts. This is a gestalt learning by insight, and this learning in the normal life of an individual. The engineer will ever remember the idea of the sketch he made for the dam site more than any sketches he developed in the engineering class, because this is something that he had in the real life, but others were some models he had learned from the classroom. Similarly, those students who learned that teachers' empty hands mean exam and teaching aids in the hands means no exam is not going to forget this in their life. They may forget what they learned in the class, but they will never forget, they will recall this learning they learned from the experience, and they will cherish it with their classmates later in alumni gatherings. In their batch gathering later, they will never recall what they learned in the class, but they will recall these incidents, because that was something they learned from their life, natural life, learned from some context in their life. Here, learning is context-based. So is the case with the child whose hand burned. His learning also was context-based. The types of learning took place in certain context in life is almost permanent, unlike the learning we do in the classroom, at home, or we do for the examinations. Now we come to a classroom situation. How is actual learning taking place in a classroom? For example, students learn Pythagoras theorem. Students learn Pythagoras theorem. Teacher explains the theorem with the help of drawing using either digital or a blackboard. This is a lecture or demonstration method. Or the teacher can go for some activity possible in the classroom. Explain it practically using the classroom wall and the floor as a two sides of an angle, and ask them to find out the hypotenuse, which is the distance from the corner point on the ceiling to the corner point on the floor at the opposite side. Or the teacher can take the students outside the class to find out the length of a rope tied from the top of a tree to a hook fixed on the ground. And this creates a context outside the classroom. And these types of activity-based learning is advocated in constructivistic theory of learning. Now, the mathematics class is over. The next period is a language class. In language class, the teacher wants to teach the structure of a sentence. Teacher can either present it on the board and make students write the sentences in correct order, recite the same, and use it in a different context. Or the teacher can create a situation for students to interact among themselves using a given sentence pattern. And as they interact, they internalize the sentence structure. This is the method we prefer these days. The third period is a history class. The topic of study is the formation of the United Nations. What are the factors that led to the formation of a UN or United Nations? As usual, teacher can explain it with the help of the board, or teacher can organize a group activity to make a simulated situation of the conflict, war, and after resolution of the conflict, to bring a representative body of all the fractions to promote peace and prevent future conflicts. Now, in the chalk and talk learning, when the teacher explained the Pythagoras theorem on the board, those gifted and smart students benefits much. It is enough they get a glimpse and they pick up the loop and get along ahead on it. Similarly, when this teacher introduced the sentences on the board, those smart students found it appealing. And about the UN, a chalk and talk elaboration is enough for the smart students. But for the average and below average students, teacher here resorted to activity. Accordingly, students took a measurement of the walls in the classroom, then measured the length of the rope from the tree to the hook. They interacted to exercise the sentence structure, and they simulated a world war and treaty followed by that in the classroom. This benefits all because they had a full involvement of cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domain with the multi-sensory experience. But the problem is that not all the students are involved in the group activity. In all the group discussions, there will be a minority, those average students or some students with some other reason, they remain apart or they participate very passively. Therefore, in many situations, the group product will be the work of some smart students in the group. This happens in every collaborative learning activity. There will be some students remaining passive and take the fruit of the work done by the others. If they are given home assignments also, such students try to copy the work of others or they go for cut and paste from the internet. The problem is that such students find all these as artificial learning. Not only the chalk and talk explanation by the teacher, but the situation created for activity-based learning also are artificially created and have nothing to do with their life, and they don't be relevant. We have an illusion that if we introduce activity in the class, all students will be interested. In the first period of mathematics, they have a group activity. In the second period of language, they have a group activity. And the third period of social science, they have a group activity. And it goes on. By the end of the day, students go crazy. blindly we eulogize activity-based collaborative learning. There are students who find them as mechanical and boring. And also there are some introverted students. Those introverted students prefer to study alone and they don't like collaborative group activities. But all such students, all the introverted, extroverted, average students, gifted and below average students, all of them who found collaborative learning is a boring mechanical activity, they all found that, or they were all in the forefront to identify if the teacher has any teaching material in the hand or if the teacher's hands are empty. Here there was no difference between low average or above average or below average or introverted or extroverted. All students were one to identify if the teacher comes to the class will conduct examination or not. They have learned effectively that when the teacher comes to the class with the teaching material, they are going to have learning, and when the teacher comes to the class empty-handed, they are going to have examination. This everybody learns. All students, including smart, average, below average, all learned this valuable lesson. But what their teacher introduced in the class as valuable and important for the examination was felt irrelevant to their life. The secret is that what they learned from observing the teacher class is something relevant to their life. And this is also a natural learning. This is a learning taking place in the real life situation in a context. It is not like the learning taking place in the simulated artificial situation in the classroom. We can also call this learning, natural learning, as informal learning, implicit learning, or unconscious learning, though they are not exactly the same. As I said earlier, learning is natural to human beings. We learn for our survival. All types of learning expounded in the learning theories by Ivan Pavlov, by the theories of Skinner, the theories of Kurt Lewin, theories of Thorndike, the theories of Kohler and Piaget, all explain learning in life situation. We have ample of example from life about such learning. How much are we able to associate this learning with actual classroom learning? For example, the biology teacher explaining the function of human heart in the body. How do classical conditioning, operant conditioning, trial and error learning, social learning, insightful learning, and topological theories account for this teaching and learning of the topic function of the heart? I don't mean this is impossible, but the truth is it is not possible for most teacher educators. On the other hand, the subsumption theory with advanced organizer, guided discovery of the Brunner, social constructivism of the Vygotsky can explain this very easily in the class. The reason is because those classical theories explain how learning takes place naturally in our life. And most of the modern theories explain the strategies of learning in the classroom. That is, subsumption theory explains of advanced organizer for learning concepts in the classroom. Guided discovery learning is also set in classroom. And while Thorndike's trial and error and Piaget's cognitive constructivism says the adaptive process in the real life situation. In primitive life, we get examples of stimulus response and response stimulus learning. The primitive men learned from experience that sharp stone is better than their fist to attack and subdue and kill a prey when hunting. From experience, they discovered that taking some leaves or nuts have curative effect for illness, and taking some other leaves or some other nuts have fatal effect causing death. Through trial and error, they discovered and developed better means of transportation. The primitive men lived and survived because of their skill for learning, which is smartly used for hunting, defense, and for improving the quality of life. The discovery of fire, invention of wheel, development of weapons, identifying food and medicine, all will tell you examples of stimulus response, insight, observation, and gestalt learning. Here, all learning is natural part of their life. And those students who are backward in the class, and who could not learn a Pythagoras theorem, who fared badly in a numerical and linguistic skills in the classroom, they become excellent in language and numerical skill when they leave the schooling and start their own career, because they were in real life situation of learning. Those salesmen and bus conductors who are excellent in computation skill were the below average in mathematics in the class. Drama artists who learn the dialogues of the character they present were those below average students who failed to by heart a formula or an equation in the class. It's because in classroom their learning was artificial, but in life situation it is natural and it is for their survival. All modern subjects of learning is developed as part of our civilization, and they are required for the sophisticated life, not for survival skill. Therefore, they will not be learned as easily and effectively as primitive men learned for life or a modern man learned for survival in real situation. For example, the questions like, who is the author of the book Gulliver's Travel? Which is called the land of the rising sun? What are the fundamental rights enshrined in our constitution? What is the function of RAM in a computer? Which are different types of mosquitoes and what disease they spread? These things taught in the class as per the syllabus looks artificial and not natural to the students. If we offer 1,000 rupees for learning these items, the students will learn them easily, because there is an element of survival coming in the form of money which is significant for life. In the Arab country jails, the convicts, the prisoners, they are pardoned if they learn their Quranic verses by heart. Those people who failed in the matriculation class here and went to Gulf countries for any kind of work, and if they are arrested and jailed, they learn the entire Quran, because that learning means survival. Our students who completed 10 plus 2 plus 3 education but still to communicate in English, join IELTS courses for going abroad, and there they acquire communication within a few months, because their learning means survival and learning is in the real life situation. In the Skinner box, why the rat learned to press the lever is to get out from there, because it wants to survive. Koala's chimpanzee learned to fetch banana with sticks and boxes because it wants to survive. Recently in Kerala, there was a report in the social media about a girl student who learned to make parota to make a living. Usually men make Kerala parota because making Kerala parota is a heavy strenuous work. But this girl, she visited a restaurant kitchen and watched the entire process and learned it. It was an observational learning. As Bandura suggested, Bandura is of the opinion that we don't learn but cognitively and purposefully. And here the girl learned it purposefully. She learned it for her survival. If she was taught making a parota in a school syllabus as a course requirement, she wouldn't have learned it so well. Another girl, a B.Ed student, acquired coconut tree climbing skill for the survival. This was also reported in the media. Both these girls were like rats in the Skinner box, caught up in the struggle for their survival. Our brain by default has only one aim, that is to survive. Survival is the aim for all activities. Whatever we do has the aim of survival in various degrees, various times, and various contexts. To some people, survival means getting daily bread. To others, survival means having a shelter or And for some others, survival means having a friend or a partner. And for some others, survival means social recognition. And a few others, survival means maximum development of their potentiality. And all these survival needs can be a motivation factors for students to learn. Hence, if you want learning to be natural and effective, it should be something that students find essential for their survival. The major and primary reason why students are not able to study well is because they don't have a deep conviction that it is essential to learn all these subjects. Minor reasons are there, such as the level of intelligence, lack of interest in the subject, learning modes and learning style. The context-based learning is an approach that it takes into consideration all these aspects. We go back to the previous example of students learning about the possibility of having an exam in the class. Based on their observation of how teacher comes to the class. And if we ask them in the evening, did you have exam today? If we ask them, did you have exam today? What happens? They immediately, with micro fraction of a second, recall what they saw in the morning. Yes, the teacher had no book in the hand. Yeah, we had examination. Here, they recall something happened in their life. Similarly, if you ask them, what did you have for breakfast today? This question prompts their mind to scan the event of the day. They scan the episodes of the day and they say what they had in the morning. In other words, they recall from the context of what they experienced. Contextual learning involves experiences related to the various contexts in the life. If we ask the students, who is the author of Gulliver's Travel? To answer this, they need not have to refer to the life events, but they have to rake up in their memory with no reference to any context or events in their life, because this is content based, not context based. What you had for breakfast today is a context based question, but who is the author of the Gulliver's Travel is a content based question. Now you decide which is more easier to recall, this content based or this context based. Recollecting from certain context in one of life experience is called episodic memory. Recollecting from certain context of one is called episodic memory. Context based learning is based on episodic memory. And recollecting the contents on learned from the books or talks is called semantic memory. Recollecting the contents we learned from books and talks is called semantic memory. And content-based learning is based on semantic memory. And what is the difference between episodic and semantic memory? In episodic memory, information is embedded in the context. In this memory, information is stored in relationship to a particular location, circumstance, or episode in the life. On the other hand, information embedded in content is a semantic memory, which is usually derived from reading and study. Episodic memory has unlimited capacity. It forms very quickly and requires no practice. It is easily updated effortlessly, and it is natural for everyone. What did you have for breakfast? It is natural they can answer. Did you have examination today? The question prompted the episodic memory. Then this memory can be stirred up by context cues as well as body movements, posture, particular music, smell, sound, taste. Everything comes associated with this recollection of this memory. And episodic or contextual memory path is motivated by curiosity, novelty, life experience, expectation, and it is enhanced by sensory input, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. On the other hand, in semantic memory, information is embedded in the content. And learning occurs through rote practice and memorization. Rote practice requires rehearsal and repetition. But context-based learning does not require repetition. No experience is enough for context-based learning. And this difference you find in the two theories of E.L. Thorndike and Edwin R. Guthrie. Thorndike insists on rehearsal. You remember his three laws of learning, in which the law of exercise. We have to exercise, we have to practice, rehearse. But Guthrie says that one experience is enough to learn. Here he refers to the context-based learning. To learn who is the author of the Gulliver Travel. To learn who is the author of the Gulliver's Travel, the student has to establish a semantic memory pathway. The student does it by reciting. Jonathan Swift is the author of the Gulliver's Travel. Jonathan Swift is the author of the Gulliver's Travel. Jonathan Swift is the author of the Gulliver's Travel. Jonathan Swift, Jonathan Swift. They go on reciting, repeating, writing, or reading. They get it by heart. But another student remembers that on her birthday, her uncle gave her a book named Gulliver's Travel, and it was written by Jonathan Swift. And this is easily remembered because it is related to a context and natural. But the other type is not natural. It required practice with a consistent rehearsal to encode. That is why students forget so much of the curriculum taught in the school. Lecture method focus on semantic memory. Most lectures are rich in information. In a formal learning environment of the classroom, the formal learning environment of the classroom provide in-depth information, but mostly people forget 60% of it in the 48 hours after the class. You can check this with this class. How much of what I spoke here you remember after 1 or 2 days? Semantic memory is resistant to change. What you memorized cannot be altered in a different way. As an example, you can recall those verses by heart in the childhood. You remember them as it is, and you don't remember them in a different form. Semantic memory is isolated from the context. What you learned about the French Revolution, your learning about the French Revolution is an independent knowledge. It is no way connected to any context in your life. It has strict limits and inherently it lacks meaning. But we can construct a meaning out of French Revolution. Say, how French Revolution is related to our democracy now. How does the French Revolution influence our present form of government now? Then it becomes contextual for us. Otherwise, it's just a semantic content learning. French Revolution then in that way has no meaning to us. And now everybody knows how a COVID virus looks like. Everybody knows the shape of the virus. People say virus look like a rambutan fruit. Why people learn the shape and the properties of virus? See how easily they learn. Because now it is related to our life. Learning about the properties of virus is a life experience now. It is a contextual now. Otherwise, no one cares to know about this virus. Long back in my childhood, I had learned the meaning of the word from the dictionary. I had a dictionary learning of the word quarantine long back in my childhood. And quarantine is a word which we never use in our life. Last year, when I visited a zoo, I found this word written on a building, but I couldn't recall its meaning from the memory because I had forgotten it. Because I was not using the word quarantine. But now the word quarantine has learned contextually. A child was identified as autistic. Therefore, his mother learned everything about autism. which she wouldn't have learned so easily in a different situation. A cancer patient learned everything about cancer because this was related to his life. Some students work hard to get IAS or MBBS when they know that the subject matters most in their life. Then they are motivated to learn. Learning in out of context, students need somebody to push them. That is why some parents struggle hard in children's examinations. Semantic memory is linked to extrinsic motivation. Somebody or something has to motivate students to learn the contents. Episodic memory, on the other hand, is context-based. It is acquiring knowledge, and it is this information which brain attends to first. Because contextual learning is most natural and it is adhering to the survival skill. The reason why semantic memory is artificial and strenuous is because it was not a primitive requirement of the humankind. The primitive men had no need to learn who wrote this book or that book, how many types of leadership styles are there, what is the theory of relativity, who is the Secretary of the United Nations. They have no need of learning all this. Only after civilization progressed, people had the need to recall names, address, positions, and formulas, and it becomes our general knowledge. That is why the traditional content-based learning, the traditional content-based learning is very difficult. It was not our primitive need, so the skill was not inherited. Therefore, in schoolwork and homework, the contents removed from the context becomes difficult to be remembered. The concepts, names, and theories students learn are out of context in our daily life. An advantage of Gurukula system was that everything were taught in the context. The students were learning while living, and they living through learning. Whatever they learned in the Gurukula system is indelible in their minds. So we now know that it is better to teach with the context. But how to teach context for everything in the syllabus? Is it possible? This is not possible to learn everything from the context. We cannot take all or entire syllabus into the life of a student. So surely we have to make artificial context-driven environment to make semantic knowledge contextually memorable. But here again, the problem is that those below average students or some special students may still find artificial context meaningless. As I mentioned earlier, some students remain passive in the group. They passive in the group activities, programs, which is artificially organized in the classroom. That is why I mentioned from the beginning that context-based learning is for the average students. And for those exceptional students, they require some additional support. It is here that a teacher's skills comes to light. Teacher is not a conductor of a programmed activity, not somebody who strictly follows a timetable and a pre-planned lesson. Indeed, there is a timetable and a lesson plan to follow, but the actual table and the plan is the discernment and wisdom of the teacher. So, some additional has to be provided for the special students. It is like implementing Indian Constitution says that all are equal, all are to be equally treated, but some require some special consideration. The same way, whenever we implement one strategy or one pedagogical method, it cannot be applied to all students same way. There are exceptions, and where we have to take some exceptional methods. Now, what is context-based learning? Context-based learning is, number one, it's a pedagogical methodology. Number two is a student-centered approach to teaching and learning. And number three, it uses real life as well as fictitious examples in teaching environment. Number four, learning occurs through the actual practical experience with the subject rather than just mere theoretical. And number five, it uses scenarios to replicate the social and the political context from the environment. So this is context-based learning. The most important single factor influencing the learning is the active engagement of the learner with the material. Acquiring competence in the subject means learners remember specific information but also apply this information in their lives using creative, practical, and critical thinking. The competence in the subject means learners remember specific information, but they also able to apply this information in their lives using creative, practical, and critical thinking. So various contexts can be used, various contexts can be brought into the classroom. It is not possible to take the syllabus outside the classroom, but we can bring the context into the classroom. One example is a storytelling. Story can create a situation. The teacher with a good narrative skill can create a situation in the class. Context does not always mean a physical context. You can go to an imaginary world where the experiences with imagination produces biochemical effect on you. So going to a story, going to a novel, meeting the characters and interacting with them, experiencing an event produces context-based education. Ethnic celebrations in the classroom. They create a context in the campus. Celebration is an occasion to learn. It is not only fun, it's an occasion to learn. And virtual learning or using real life situation, including field trip, these create a context. We are going for the field trip for a learning. There is a context, and from the context, whatever the students learned, they never forget. The students recall what the experience they had during a tour or a field trip than what they learned in the classrooms. And besides, various cultural viewpoints are presented in the class becomes more relevant to a greater number of students. We can incorporate diverse languages, diverse foods, and diverse fashion in the class. Every day we greet good morning or namaste. On some days we greet in different language. We have different types of languages in India and from outside. And we have here midday meal. What do we have for midday meal? We have rice and we have curry. One day take a Gujarati food, another take a Manipur dish. That makes a context in the campus. And the school can buy some North Indian costume for the South Indian students. Let them wear this dress and feel what it is. This can produce some context in the class. Online guest speakers, they can create a context in the class. Classroom visitors, they can create a context in the class. All these will create a context in the school and make episodic learning. A learning environment is a place where learners can explore and find information and link the information to context. In Japan, students are given breakfast and lunch in the school. And when all the students are taking the lunch and breakfast, announcements are made describing what is the food item they are having, what are the ingredients of the food, and what are the nutritious qualities of each dish they are taking. So while they are taking the food, they are having an education on diet and health. And a most important thing is students know the food they take. Students understand what type of food they are taking and the effect on their body. And while they are taking the food, the information is given and it's a contextual episodic learning. The problem with our junk food here is that they do not know what they are taking. And game and sports is a context. When they are doing the exercises, there can be instruction or information regarding a particular posture, a particular action has what effect on the muscles and on the internal organs. The students know their exercises and learn. So in the campus, anywhere and everywhere, we can hold a class and discussion. Even in the toilet, they can have a discussion, a message of hygiene. If there is a toilet complex, the students should know, even if they don't know how to clean a toilet from the school, from the home, they have to learn it from the school at least. So it makes use of both real and concrete and the social context for the acquisition and processing of knowledge. For example, the event of plane crash at Jaipur airport at Calicut last week. We had a tragic incident in the Calicut airport. A plane crashed there. We get a lot of content information from the media, but that content can be brought into the classroom for discussion. A number of topics emerge like safety, technology, emergency. Since it is a touching event, students feel it in their context. Similarly, the landslide happened in the Idukki district and the flood happening in different places, the present COVID pandemic, or when there is an Olympic Games, when there is election, all the current affairs can be used as a context to impart the content knowledge in the class. The aim of context-based learning is to develop competence. Your competence is something going beyond the semantics. For example, from the event of plane crash at Kozhikode, apart from the factual information, students are able to draw larger meaning of such incidents of our life. It's emotional, it's economical, it is professional and social implication, coupled with the capacity for responding to such a situation. This is the development of competency. Competency means having the knowledge and having the ability to acting upon the knowledge. In a history class, learning goes beyond the ability to recite the bunch of dates and names from memory. Competence here would be the ability to draw larger meaning from the events of the past. In order to make sense of what happens today, we can make use of what happened in the past. In the mathematics class, beyond the memorization math formulas, students know how formulas apply to the real world, how they are central to the disciplines like programming, architecture, engineering, and other fields. But the big problem is we have a tendency to go to the extreme. I am not telling you that creating a context is the only method of learning. The problem is that we go to the one extreme. When we say that context-based learning is better than a content-based learning, we drop the content-based learning, go to the extreme level of content-based learning. And if you go to the extreme level of context-based learning, what will happen? After 10 years, there will be another resource person on the same place talking to the audience that we have been using the context-based learning and we have been there is no content in the education, so we should stick on to the content-based learning, and all the education will then switch on to the content-based. This is the problem happening in our education. We go to an extreme when we know that when there was an extreme level of teacher-centered education, we stopped it and went to an extreme level of student-centered education. Then we found there is a problem. So instead of taking the extreme level, we should take a smart learning. A smart learning is neither exclusively content-based nor context-based. Over-reliance of a single memory system of episodic memory or semantic memory, the singular method of learning for the heterogeneous class of students is not optimal. That is the reason we create generations of slow learners who are slow to recall and who are low in self-confidence. So we have been discussing about context-based learning, but that is not to neglect the content-based learning. We are going for smart learning. So with this, I conclude my lecture. I hope I have been true to the theme I am assigned, and the audience felt the time not a waste but fruitful. I thank the university department heads and the organizers for arranging this meeting on a digital platform, and we from different parts, different place met here with on a single idea, and we have a single mission of teaching to make the future generation, and ultimate aim is our nation building. So I appreciate the patience with which you listen to me. I find there are 223 participants. They have been focusing on what I am speaking. I appreciate their patience and all the organizers, and I thank you. Thanks to one and all.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, one participant's question is I read the question, sir. Sir?
Yes.
Is there any precaution measures to be carried out context-based learning or teaching and teaching?
I think I have already deliberated that when we go for context-based learning, don't think that a learning method can make any wonders. It is the discretion of the teacher how we use a method, and context-based method goes in company with the content-based method. We can't neglect that. We should consider all the students in the class for whom we will have to deviate a little. And as far as the context-based learning is concerned, this is from the real life situation. Just I have given ample of example from the life, how learning takes place in a life situation. The same way the learning can take place in the classroom situation. The classroom learning, we don't feel it like a formal, like a structured and artificial situation, but feel a classroom learning is like everyday experience we have in our home or anywhere. I think this was the same experience those students when they were having the education in the Gurukula system of education. So what is the precaution to be taken? We don't have any reported risk involved in context-based learning.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one participant want to speak to you.
Yeah.
Dr. Joshi Pudur. Yes, Dr.
Joshi Pudur.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Dr. Rajesh Don, I am very happy to attend this session, and I'm very happy to also inform all the participants that Dr. Regis John is my own companion years ago in Don Bosco Institution. I am very proud that he has presented this theme very systematically in a scholarly fashion. And I would like to appreciate him for the presentation that he has made. So thank you, Dr. Regis John.
Thank
The
you.
presentation was good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, next question. What are the steps in mastering this learning, sir?
Steps in
Mastering this learning.
mastering
This learning.
mastering this learning. See, we don't have a methodology developed for giving training for these things in the classrooms. Whatever we have, we take from the constructivist pedagogy to implement a program in the class. I request you to refer to the guidelines of the new modern education on constructivist methodology. I think it is there in all the B.Ed colleges syllabus, how constructivism is done. It takes a long to explain all this, but it is available in every B.Ed college. Constructivism is advocated, and it is there. How we import this all the context in the class, and I have given you examples, and I hope you will refer to the B.Ed syllabus.
Thank you, sir. Next question, sir. Tell me about some examples about creative classroom.
Yeah. Creative classroom means you mean the creativity to be developed by the students. This is just presenting a situation to the students. He presenting a situation to the students, and they have to find out with their own creativity. We give some leading questions also. Give some leading question with a learning item. They have to sit in a group, and these questions has to lead them, and different groups has to come up with the different answers, and when these answers are put together, it will be the creative idea what the teacher has intended. You know, only in a learning situation we can, with example, we can do that. And almost all the constructive method activities, all the classroom discussions are leading to the creativity. So how students come up with the creative? You can refer to this lateral thinking and Sinek learning. There are a lot of giving, encouraging this parallel thinking and thinking out of the box. And you can refer to all these strategies. For example, there are questions like some dots given on the desk or on the table, and you have to put them together. You have to connect all these dots together without touching the pen. This is an example. In this way, there are strategies for they're improving their creative thinking. This is to encourage divergent thinking among them. Another thing is that we can arrange a debate in the class, give them the topic beforehand, and ask the students to come with the preparing. And when the students are ready, we just shift the side. Ask the one side to speak for the other side, and the other side to speak for this side. And that will generate a lot of creative ideas. The students identify themselves, and also they identify most about the topic they are going to discuss. And there are so many items, so many tips for creating ideas are available now.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Can you explain contextual based and content based learning?
I think this is what I have been doing so far. I have explained context-based learning. I have explained content-based learning. But in a nutshell, I tell you, context-based, yeah, you recall the example I tell you, who is the author of the Gulliver's Travel? And a student who learned the name of the author, Jonathan Swift, when her uncle gifted a book, that is a context-based. But another student who just by hearted is the name of the Jonathan Swift. It is a content-based. Content-based involves all the factual information and the theoretical knowledge. without this is practical application. But the context-based learning, we imbibe the same information, same knowledge, practical experience, and the practical experience mostly based on our life experience. And the idea is to make the classroom experience as normal and natural as a life experience. So I hope this is clear for you.
Thank you, sir. Next, one more question only. How we can avoid controversial issues in context-based learning?
See, how do we identify whether an issue is controversial or not? It depends on the maturity level of the students. For example, some political issues we cannot discuss in the classroom in the lower classes, but it can be okay in a higher education classes, and some sensitive issues also. So we have to decide whether it is suitable for the particular age of students or not. It depends on the level and their maturity level, and also what is the type of the society we are having. The society is highly sensitive. We have to avoid some controversial issues in the class. And when the students, we are not allowing the students to bring up any issues into the class. That teacher can collect the suggestions by the students, and teacher can suggest what are the issues to be discussed in the class, only based on the suggestion from the students. So teacher is there to filter out what are the issues to be discussed and what are the issues not to be discussed. And there is no clear a scale to measure these are controversial, these are not controversial. It depends on the age of the students and the culture of the society and the syllabus we are imparting in the classroom.
Excuse me, sir, one more question is there. I will read. Sir, teachers should have good knowledge of learning theories.
Yes.
Whether present teachers are having these skills?
That I cannot say whether present teachers having the theory or not. But what I learned, what I understand is that now we are going too much of application level. There's a tendency for missing the theory. That is why I concluded with the remark that we should strike a balance between content-based and context-based. The content should be given importance. So what happens now is that most of the teachers give the assignments to the students to learn the theories. You learn the theory and submit an assignment or a report. And students do not know how far, in how depth they have to go into that theory. Actually, when they are given to do something, they take a peripheral, gather some peripheral from the theory and present there. And the problem with limited knowledge of content or theory is because undue importance is given to the practical applications. We should always go through the golden median. That's the middle path. Both content and practical application equally important.
Sir, that's our question. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
So thank you so much for
presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bindu madam.
Yes. Now I invite Dr. Bindamam to deliver the vote of thanks. Please, ma'am.
Good evening, one and all. It is the second day of 7 days webinar serial. Today, my role is to give vote of thanks on behalf of the 3 universities. செய்யாமல் செய்த உதவிக்கு வையகமும் வானகமும் ஆற்றல் அரிது. இந்த வடிக்கிணங்க இந்த 7 நாள் இணைய வழி கருத்தரங்குக்கு ஆதரவு அளித்த ஊக்குவிக்கும் 3 பல்கலைக்கழகத்தின் துணைவேந்தர்களுக்கு தனித்தனியே நன்றி கூறுகிறேன். டாக்டர் பஞ்சநாதம், தமிழ்நாடு டீச்சர் எஜுகேஷன் யூனிவர்சிட்டி சென்னை, and Dr. Kaliraj, Bharatiyar University Coimbatore, and our Mother Teresa Women's University Vice Chancellor Dr. Vaideki Vijayakumar. Very much thanks to permit to conduct this program with all your blessings. Thank you, 3 convenient 3 university registrar, controller, dean, and faculties of admissions, and finance and all the section staff, thank for your cooperation. My thanks to the 3 conveners of the universities, program convener, organizing secretaries, webinar host, especially Dr. Sivashakti Rajamal, Dr. Premalada, Dr. Beulah Belbensi. Thank you for your wonderful organization. Next, thanks to our chief guest, Rajesh John. അലുവയും കോഴിക്കോട് ബിരിയാണിയുമാണ് ഫേമസ് എന്നാണ് നമ്മൾ കേട്ടിട്ടുള്ളത്. പക്ഷെ ഇന്ന് സാറ് പറഞ്ഞാണ് അറിയണത് പൊറോട്ടയാണ് ഫേമസ്. സാറേ, സാറിന്റെ എക്സ്പ്ലനേഷൻ എല്ലാം ലൈവായിട്ട്, അതായത് എന്താ പറയേണ്ടത്, നമ്മൾ ഈ കോണ്ടസ്റ്റും കണ്ടന്റും എല്ലാം നമ്മൾ മറന്നു പോകും. പക്ഷെ ഈ പറയുന്ന എക്സാമ്പിൾ നമ്മൾ ജീവിതത്തോട്, അതായത് ഇപ്പോൾ നടന്ന ഫ്ലൈറ്റ് ആക്സിഡന്റ് തൊട്ട് മൂന്നാറിലുള്ള ആ നിലച്ചരിവ് എല്ലാ സാറിന്റെ അപ്പം ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് വന്നിട്ട് പ്രസന്റ് നോളജ് ഇരിക്കണം എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ഇതിന്റെ സാറിന്റെ ഒരു തീം. പിന്നെ ഈ സാർ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുള്ളതായിട്ടുള്ള എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങളിലും അഡാപ്റ്റീവ് പെഡഗോജിയിലെ നോ വൺ സ്ട്രാറ്റജി ഈസ് ഈക്വൽ ടു ഓൾ ദ ടൈപ്പ് ഓഫ് സ്റ്റുഡൻസ്, എസ്പെഷ്യലി ഗിഫ്റ്റഡ് ആൻഡ് സ്ലോ ലേണേഴ്സ് എക്സെട്ര. ദെൻ ടീച്ചർ വിത്ത് ലേണിംഗ് മെറ്റീരിയൽ വന്നാൽ ക്ലാസ് ഉണ്ടെന്നും, ടീച്ചർ വിത്ത് നോ മെറ്റീരിയൽസ് ആണെങ്കിൽ അത് എക്സാം ആണെന്നും. എന്നാൽ ഇപ്പോൾ സിറ്റുവേഷനിൽ സ്റ്റുഡൻസിന്റെ ടെൻഷൻ ഒരിക്കലും മാറാൻ പോകുന്നില്ല. സ്റ്റുഡൻസ് ടെൻഷൻ ഓൺലി റിമൈൻ. ദെൻ പാവ്ലോസ് എക്സ്പെരിമെന്റ്, പിന്നെ സൈക്കോളജിയിലുള്ള എല്ലാ സൈക്കോളജിസ്റ്റിന്റെ എക്സ്പെരിമെന്റ്സിനെയും കോട്ട് ചെയ്തത് നല്ല ഒരു എക്സ്പ്ലനേഷൻ ആണ് സർ. ഓൺലൈൻ ടീച്ചിങ്, ദെൻ
Yes, Bindu ma'am. Bindu ma'am.
Network problem.
Network problem.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your thought.
താങ്ക് യു ഫോർ യുവർ. നമ്മൾ ഇപ്പോ ടീമിനെ ടാർഗറ്റ് ചെയ്താലും സാർ പറയുന്ന അത്ര എക്സാമ്പിൾസ് നമ്മൾ ഓർമ്മയിൽ വെച്ച്, ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് എഫക്റ്റീവ് ടീച്ചിങ് ആൻഡ് ലേണിംഗ്. ഹൗ ടു ടീച്ച്, അങ്ങനെ വാട്ട് വേ വി ടീച്ച് ആൻഡ് വാട്ട് വി ഇംപ്രസ് ദ സ്റ്റുഡൻസ്. ദെൻ ഫ്രഞ്ച് റെവല്യൂഷൻ എവിടെ വന്ന്, ഫ്രഞ്ച് റെവല്യൂഷൻ നമ്മൾ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷനിൽ എങ്ങനെ കൊണ്ടുവന്നെന്നും, ഹൗ ടു ഇൻഫ്ലുവൻസ് അവർ ലേണിംഗ്, ദെൻ ദ ഷേപ്പ് ഓഫ് അവർ വൈറസിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ളതും. ഇപ്പോൾ പുതിയ പുതിയ നോളജ് ആണല്ലോ, ക്വാറന്റൈനും ലോക്ക്ഡൌണും, ഇങ്ങനെ എല്ലാ പുതിയ നോളജ്. സോ കണ്ടന്റ് ബേസ്ഡ് നോളജും കോണ്ടസ്റ്റ് ബേസ്ഡ് നോളജും എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഒരു സ്റ്റുഡൻസിനെ വന്ന് സ്വാധീനിക്കുന്നത്, ഇതിനെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള സാറിന്റെ സ്പീച്ച് വെരി ലൈവ് ആൻഡ് വെരി ഇംപ്രസീവ് ആൻഡ് വെരി ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റിംഗ് സാർ. ഒരു നോട്ട് ലൈക്ക് എ സ്പീച്ച്, ഓൺലി ഇന്ററാക്ഷൻ. Very much thanks to John sir coming and appreciating our invitations and accept this delivering the lecture in a very effective way to all the participants. I agree to understand this in a simplest way sir. ഒന്നും ഒരു വലിയ ഒരു പ്രിൻസിപ്പൽ വന്ന് ക്ലാസ് ലെക്ചർ അടിക്കുന്നതല്ലാതെ എന്താ നടന്നത്, എങ്ങനെ നടക്കുന്നു, എപ്പോൾ നടക്കും എന്ന് സാർ ഈ പറഞ്ഞ സിംപിളസ്റ്റ് വേ എനിക്ക് ഇഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു, അതുമായി എല്ലാവർക്കും ഇഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു എന്നുള്ളതോടെ വളരെ വളരെ സന്തോഷം. ഓൺ ബിഹാഫ് ഓഫ് ദ 3 യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റീസ് വെരി മച്ച് താങ്ക്സ് ടു ഒന്നണ്ടാൾ സാർ. സാർ കോഴിക്കോട് നിന്ന് ഇനി വരുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും ബിരിയാണി എല്ലാം കൊണ്ടുവരണേ. ശരി സാർ, താങ്ക് യു സാർ.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much ചേച്ചി. Dr. Bindu, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
രാജകുമാറാണ്.
Yes, yes.
സാറേ സെഷൻ അടിപൊളിയായിട്ട് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നത് സാറേ. ബിക്കോസ് ഓഫ് പിന്നെ അത് ഒരുപാടൊക്കെ ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ലിറ്ററേച്ചറിലൊക്കെ ഒരു ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, ரொம்ப അടിപൊളിയായിട്ട് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. Really, I understand that how can we teach and all those things from the because of you. You are the, I think today the session was very nice as well as അടിപൊളിയായിട്ട് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഒരുപാടൊക്കെ പ്രൊഫസറൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, പക്ഷെ അവര് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലൊക്കെ എക്സ്പ്ലെയിൻ ചെയ്യുന്നില്ല, ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് സബ്ജക്റ്റിലെ എക്സ്പെർട്ട് ആയിട്ട് കാണില്ല. ടുഡേ സാറിന്റെ ഒരുപാട് എക്സ്പ്ലെയിൻ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് സബ്ജക്റ്റിലാണ്. റിയലി അഡ്മിറബിൾ ആണ് സാറേ. ரொம்ப നന്ദിയാണ് സാറേ. ധന്യവാദം.
Thank you so much Rajkumar sir. Thank you so much. Thank you Dr. Premalata ma'am. Thank you Dr. Bindu. Thank you Dr. Beulah ma'am. Thank you sir. Thank you so much. Thank you all the participants. Thank you very much. Thank you.